The text from my father arrived at 3:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. Dinner, tonight, 7 sharp. Important family matters to discuss. No question mark, no room for negotiation. Classic Victor Chen communication. Direct, commanding, and entirely on his terms. I stared at my phone, my stomach tightening into that familiar knot. In the Chen family, important family matters was code for Riley has disappointed us again. I glanced around my studio, the sprawling monitors, the VR equipment, the digital art displays casting soft light across the industrial concrete floors of my Capitol Hill loft. 3 years of 80-hour weeks, of ramen dinners and maxed-out credit, cards of believing in something no one else could see yet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 years of being the family embarrassment. You're not actually going, are you? Jackson's voice cut through my thoughts as he adjusted code on one of our prototype headsets. My co-founder and former college roommate knew the Chen family dynamic all too well. I slipped my phone into my pocket. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice, Riley. That's what you taught me. Jackson put down the headset. We have the Winters meeting tomorrow. The most important pitch of our lives. Maybe skip the psychological warfare tonight? He was right. Marcus Winters could change everything for Artscape. But family is family, even when they're experts at making you feel 2 inches tall. I'll be fine, I lied, grabbing my jacket. Besides, maybe tonight's the night they finally see what we're building. Jackson's expression said it all. Don't hold your breath. The drive to Bellevue took 40 minutes, just enough time to rehearse yet another defense of my career choices. My parents' house stood exactly as it always had, pristine, imposing, a monument to immigrant success. Dad's Mercedes and Mom's Lexus in the circular driveway. Ethan's Audi already there. Even Zoe's Tesla was parked perfectly in line, the full Chen success parade on display for the neighbors. Then there was my 7-year-old Subaru, splattered with mud from my weekend hike, the back seat cluttered with VR equipment. I parked, it on the street. I checked my watch, 6:52 p.m. In the Chen household, arriving less than 15 minutes early was considered late. I was already failing. The door opened before I could knock. My mother, Grace Chen, stood with perfect posture, her attorney's scrutiny immediately cataloging my appearance. Your hair, she said instead of hello, frowning at the blue streak I'd added last week. The neighbors will think you've joined a gang. Hello to you too, Mom. I stepped inside, kissing her cheek. She smelled of jasmine and disapproval. Everyone's waiting in the dining room, she said, already walking away. Your father has important news. The formal dining room. Not good. That room was reserved for major announcements and significant disappointments. I braced myself. My father sat at the head of the table naturally. Ethan to his right, Zoe to his left. The golden children in their proper places. My mother took her seat at the opposite end, leaving me the lone chair on the side. The outsider's position. Riley. My father nodded. Sit. My brother and sister offered perfunctory smiles. Ethan in his tailored suit straight from his investment banking office. Zoe in her power dress, fresh from court. Both successful, respectable, walking the path laid out for them. Meanwhile, I'd shown up in jeans and a blazer, the blue streak, in my hair suddenly feeling like a neon sign flashing disappointment above my head. Now that we're all here, my father began, I have news to share. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was an invitation to the Pacific Medical Association's annual gala, the premier event for the medical community in the Northwest. I'm being honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award, he announced. The entire Chen family will be present. The whole medical community will be there. That's wonderful, Dad, Zoe said immediately. Congratulations, Ethan added. Well deserved. They both looked at me expectantly. My turn. That's great, Dad. You've worked hard for it. I meant it. My father had built his practice from nothing after immigrating. His work ethic was undeniable. Which brings me to the matter of family presentation. His eyes fixed on me. The Chen family will be front and center. Our accomplishments, our successes. Ethan will speak about his recent promotion. Zoe about her new partnership track. Here it comes. And you, Riley, my mother interjected, we need to discuss what to tell people. About? About your situation, she said delicately. My situation. I repeated the word slowly. You mean my company? The one that's about to close its first major funding round? My father sighed. Riley, it's been 3 years of this hobby. Business, I corrected. Artscape is a business. Playing with computer games is not a business, he said dismissively. Not a real one. We're creating groundbreaking immersive digital art experiences, Dad. It's not playing games. Ethan cleared his throat. What Dad means is that it's difficult to explain to his colleagues. The gala is important for his image. For the family image, my mother corrected, which is why we have a proposal. My father nodded to Zoe, who produced a folder that she slid across the table. Inside was information about a management position at her law firm's technology department. They need someone with your computer skills, my mother explained. Zoe has arranged an interview. It's a real job, Riley, with benefits, a career path. The subtext was clear, a respectable job, something they could proudly announce at the gala. I closed the folder without looking through it. I have a real job. I'm the CEO of my own company. A company that makes no money, my father responded. We're pre-revenue, not non-revenue. There's a difference. We're building something revolutionary. My father exchanged looks with my mother. The look that said, here we go again with the fantasies. Riley, my mother said gently, as if explaining to a child, you're almost 30. It's time to join the real world. The real world, I laughed. You mean your world? A world where people pay their own bills, my father said pointedly. That stung. When I'd left graduate school to start Artscape, they'd cut me off completely. I hadn't asked for money since. I pay my own bills. Barely, Ethan muttered. Not everyone defines success by the size of their paycheck, Ethan. No, my father interrupted. Success is defined by creating something of value, something that contributes to society. That's exactly what I'm doing. Drawing pictures on computers is not a contribution. My father's fist hit the table, making the silverware jump. It's a phase that has gone on too long. You had every advantage, Stanford, connections, opportunities, and you throw it all away to play entrepreneur. The room fell silent. My mother studied her hands. Ethan and Zoe suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. At the gala, my father continued, his voice controlled again. When asked, we will say you're between opportunities and considering offers. That is all? No mention of this hobby? There it was. The word that reduced 3 years of sacrifice and innovation to a child's passing fancy. I stood up slowly. I have to go. I have a meeting in the morning. With more dreamers like yourself? My father asked. With Marcus Winters. That got their attention. Even my father couldn't dismiss one of the most successful tech investors in Seattle. Marcus Winters wouldn't waste time on, Ethan began. On what? A hobby? I pushed my chair in carefully. Believe what you want. Tell your friends whatever makes you comfortable. But someday, you're going to have to face the fact that I chose a different definition of success than yours. My mother stood, her face concerned. Riley, please stay. We're just worried about you. No, you're worried about how I make you look. I headed for the door. I'll come to your gala, Dad. I'll even wear a proper suit. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. Not even for you. As I walked out, I heard my father's voice. When this fantasy fails, don't come asking for help. I drove back to my loft, in silence, his words echoing in my head. The same words I'd heard when I dropped out of Stanford's graduate program, when I turned down the corporate job offers, when I launched Artscape with nothing but vision and stubborn determination. Back at my studio, Jackson was still working, surrounded by lines of code on multiple screens. That was fast, he said, not looking up. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Same script, different day. I dropped onto the couch. How's the demo looking for tomorrow? It'll blow Winters away. Jackson finally turned. That bad, huh? They're pretending I'm between opportunities at Dad's awards gala. Can't have... The neighbors know their son makes digital pictures for a living. Jackson snorted. If they only knew what those digital pictures are about to be worth. They'll never see it. I stared at our prototype, the headset that transported users into living digital art spaces. Not until someone else tells them it's valuable. Then let's make sure someone does. Jackson tossed me a controller. Help me test the waterfall. Sequence. Winters needs to experience something he's never seen before. I caught the controller, pushing thoughts of family dinner away. Let's make some magic. The Marcus Winters meeting changed everything, though not in the way I expected. We arrived at the downtown Seattle skyscraper housing Winters Capital an hour early. Jackson nervously adjusting his rarely worn tie while I triple-checked our demo equipment. Stop fidgeting, I told him, though my own stomach was performing. Olympic-level gymnastics. Easy for you to say. You grew up with people like this. Trust me, that doesn't help, I muttered as the elevator climbed to the 47th floor. Winters' receptionist led us to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. 5 minutes later, Marcus Winters himself walked in. No entourage, no fanfare. Just intense eyes and a handshake that meant business. Riley? Chen, he said, studying me. Your proposal was... unusual. Unusual enough to get this meeting, I replied. He almost smiled. You have 20 minutes to show me why I should care about digital art experiences. I glanced at Jackson, who gave me a slight nod. Game time. Mr. Winters, we could walk you through projections and market analyses, I began. But that's not why you're here. You want to see something you've never seen before. I handed him our prototype headset, sleeker and more advanced than anything on the market. This is Artscape. Not a game, not traditional VR. It's a new medium entirely. The next 15 minutes were silent, except for the occasional soft exclamation from Winters as he experienced our creation. Digital landscapes that responded to emotion. Art that evolved based on the viewer's reactions. Experiences that blended. Technology with raw human feeling. When he finally removed the headset, his expression had changed completely. Who else has seen this? Just our test group, and now you. Keep it that way. He set the headset down carefully. This is beyond what you described in your proposal. Words are limiting. That's why we built this. Winters leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not investing in Artscape. My heart sank. Jackson stiffened beside me. I'm acquiring it. The words hung in the air between us. Excuse me? I finally managed. 20 million. My team takes over business. Operations, scaling, marketing. You and your partner maintain creative control as chief innovation officers. Winters Capital announces the acquisition next month at the Emerald Tech Summit. $20 million. The number bounced around my brain like a pinball. We're not selling, I heard myself say. Winters blinked. Jackson made a choking sound beside me. Perhaps you misunderstood, Winters said slowly. This is a generous offer for a pre-revenue startup. I understood perfectly. My voice was steadier than I felt. But Artscape isn't for sale. We're looking for investment to scale, not an exit. Riley, Jackson whispered urgently. Every company is for sale at the right price, Winters countered. Not this one. I met his gaze directly. Artscape is changing how people experience digital art. That vision is worth more than $20 million. For a moment, Winters looked like he might get angry. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Victor Chen's kid, aren't you? I recognize that stubborn look. He sat back. Your father never backs down either. The comparison to my father caught me off guard. You know my dad? Seattle's a small town at certain levels. Winters studied me with new interest. He doesn't seem the type to raise a digital artist. He isn't, I admitted. He thinks I'm wasting my potential. And yet here you are turning down $20 million. Winters tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. All right, Ms. Chen. No acquisition. Let's discuss investment terms instead. 2 hours later, we left Winters Capital with a term sheet for $5 million in funding at a $50 million valuation, and something potentially more valuable. Winters had personally invited us to showcase Artscape at the Emerald Tech Summit, the Northwest's premier technology event. I can't believe you turned down $20 million, Jackson said as we rode the elevator down. We could have been set for life. But Artscape would have disappeared into Winters Capital, I replied. Become another acquisition statistic. This way, we build something that lasts. Jackson shook his head. Your parents think you're impractical, but you might be the most practical person I know. Long-term practical. I laughed. Try explaining that at a Chen family dinner. Speaking of which, my father's gala was approaching, and I had a promise to keep. The Pacific Medical Association gala was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, Seattle's medical elite in tuxedos and evening gowns. My family arrived together, the picture-perfect Chen success story. I kept my promise about the suit, a sleek, modern cut that cost more than I should have spent, but tonight was important to my father. I could give him that much. Remember, my mother whispered as we entered the grand ballroom. You're considering several opportunities. Keep it vague but promising. I nodded, not having the energy to fight. Let them have their fiction for one night. The evening progressed predictably. My father worked the room like the respected figure he was. My mother charmed the wives of hospital board members. Ethan and Zoe networked effortlessly, collecting business cards and dropping impressive career milestones into conversation. And then there was me, answering the dreaded question over and over. So, Riley, what are you doing these days? Each time I'd start, I run a digital technology company. And each time, my mother or father would smoothly interrupt. Riley's exploring several exciting opportunities right now. So many options with a Stanford background. After the third interruption, I stopped trying. I smiled politely and let them control the narrative. Tonight wasn't about me anyway. During dinner, my father received his award to enthusiastic applause. His speech was humble yet confident, acknowledging his journey from immigrant to respected physician. I felt genuine pride watching him. His accomplishments were remarkable, his work ethic unquestionable. If only he could see that I'd inherited that same determination, just applied to a different path. As the evening wound down, I found myself at the bar ordering a much-needed scotch when I heard my name. Riley Chen? I turned to find Marcus Winters himself, immaculate in a tuxedo. Mr. Winters, I didn't expect to see you here. Hospital. Board, he explained, gesturing vaguely. Unavoidable obligation. He nodded toward my father across the room. Just heard Dr. Chen's speech. Impressive man. He is, I agreed. Now I understand where you get that backbone. Winters sipped his drink. How's the Artscape implementation coming? Ready for the summit in 3 weeks? We're on track. The new environmental response algorithms are... Riley, there you are. My mother appeared suddenly, as if materializing from my worst nightmare. She cast a curious glance at Winters. I don't believe we've met. Marcus Winters. He extended his hand. Your daughter and I were just discussing her company's presentation at the Emerald Tech Summit. My mother's smile froze. Company? Artscape, Winters continued, oblivious to the bomb he was dropping. Most innovative digital art platform I've seen in years. That's why I invested. I could practically hear my mother's mental gears grinding. Invested? In Riley's project? $5 million at a $50 million valuation. Should be 75 after the summit. Winters turned to me. The Forbes reporter confirmed for our press junket, by the way. They're quite interested in the art meets technology angle. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to calculation in record time. Forbes, she repeated. How fascinating. Riley's been so modest about her work. That might have been the first time my mother had ever used the words Riley and modest in the same sentence. Modesty's overrated in business, Winters said with a shrug. Your daughter turned down my acquisition offer. $20 million. Said her vision was worth more. He raised his glass slightly. I'm starting to think she was right. With that, he excused himself, leaving me alone with my mother's stunned silence. $20 million? She finally whispered. He offered you $20 million? For the company, yes. And you declined? It wasn't the right move for Artscape. My mother stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. Before she could respond, my father joined us. Grace, the Prescotts are leaving. We should... He noticed her expression. What's wrong? My mother turned to him, still, processing. Victor, did you know Riley's company is valued at $50 million? My father's face went through a fascinating transformation. Disbelief, confusion, skepticism in rapid succession. That's impossible, he said flatly. Marcus Winters just told me himself. He invested $5 million. Marcus Winters? Now my father looked genuinely shocked. The Marcus Winters? Apparently, my mother continued, her voice rising slightly. Riley turned down an acquisition offer of $20 million. 20? My father couldn't even finish the number. He turned to me. Is this true? For 3 years, I'd waited for them to take my work seriously. Now I had their full attention. Forbes is covering Artscape at the Emerald Tech Summit next month, I said quietly. You're welcome to attend if you're interested in what I actually do. With that, I finished my scotch and set the glass down. It's been a lovely evening, and congratulations again on your award, Dad. It's well-deserved. I straightened my suit jacket. I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I left them standing there, trading looks of confusion and dawning realization. For once, I'd rendered the great Victor and Grace Chen speechless. The following week brought silence from my family. No calls, no texts, not even their usual forwarded articles about corporate job opportunities. I was too busy preparing for the summit to dwell on it. Artscape's presentation was coming together. Beautifully. We'd secured additional engineering talent with the Winters funding, accelerating our development timeline. The office, a real office now, not just my loft, buzzed with energy. Amara, my marketing advisor and best friend since college, orchestrated our summit strategy with military precision. The Forbes interviewer wants to focus on your background, she said, reviewing her notes. The contrast between your family's traditional success and your digital innovation. I froze. Let's steer away from family narratives. Riley, it's a compelling story. Stanford dropout rebels against Dr. Father's expectations to pioneer digital art technology. My family's off limits, I insisted. Focus on the technology, the vision, the market potential. Amara gave me her therapist look, the one that said she saw right through me. They still don't get it, do they? Even after winters? They're processing, I said more diplomatically than I felt. 3 years of building something revolutionary, and they're still processing. Amara shook her head. You know, for insanely smart people, your family can be remarkably dense. They have a specific definition of success, I defended, though I wasn't sure why I was defending them. Medicine, law, finance, measurable, respectable career paths. And apparently, $50 million tech companies don't qualify. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Dinner tomorrow? Just us. Please. I showed Amara the message. The please is new, I noted. Progress, she agreed. Just don't let them hijack your narrative again. I agreed to meet my mother at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant downtown, away from family history and expectations. She was already seated when I arrived, looking somehow both formidable and uncertain. Grace Chen, Harvard law graduate and feared litigator, rarely did uncertainty. Riley, she stood to greet me. Thank you for coming. We exchanged awkward pleasantries as we ordered. Once the waiter left, my mother folded her hands on the table, her negotiation posture. I owe you an apology, she began, surprising me immediately. We haven't been fair to your work. I stayed silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Your father and I. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We come from backgrounds where security was never guaranteed. Everything we've built came from sacrifice and following proven paths. I know your story, Mom, but perhaps we've been telling it wrong. She sighed. When you left Stanford, all we saw was risk. We couldn't understand choosing uncertainty when you had clear opportunities. I saw possibility, not risk, I explained. Artscape was never about rejecting your values. It was about applying them to something I believed in. My mother nodded slowly. Marcus Winters explained what your company actually does. It's not what we thought. I couldn't help but smile. You mean it's not me playing video games in my pajamas? He showed Victor the valuation documents. My mother actually looked embarrassed. We had no idea, Riley. No idea it was so legitimate. There it was. Legitimacy defined by dollar signs and influential investors. Not by vision or innovation or determination. Still, it was something. So now that Marcus Winters has validated my career choice, it's suddenly respectable? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. That's fair, my mother conceded, surprising me again. We should have trusted your judgment, should have at least tried to understand. The waiter delivered, our meals giving me a moment to collect my thoughts. Why now, Mom? What's really going on? She set down her fork. Your father's practice is in trouble. What kind of trouble? A malpractice suit, a significant one. She lowered her voice. The insurance won't cover all of it. We may lose the house, the practice, everything. The admission clearly cost her. Grace Chen didn't discuss failures or weaknesses, not ever. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But I'm not sure what this has to do with me. Nothing directly, she assured me. We're not asking for money if that's what you're thinking. Then what are you asking for? Understanding. She met my eyes directly. And perhaps a second chance. To be the parents we should have been when you first came to us with your vision. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think this revelation came from genuine regret rather than their changing circumstances. The summit's in 2 weeks, I said finally. You and Dad are welcome to attend. See what I've actually built before deciding it's worth your support. My mother nodded, relief visible in her shoulders. We'll be there. As I drove home that night, I wondered if financial crisis had accomplished what years of my hard work couldn't, forcing my parents to reconsider their rigid definitions of success and failure. The thought carried equal parts vindication and sadness. The day of the Emerald Tech Summit arrived in a blur of preparation and nervous energy. Our booth stood at a prime location on the main exhibition floor, the privilege of being a featured Winters Capital investment. The Artscape experience drew crowds immediately. People lined up to try our immersive digital art platform, emerging from the experience with expressions of wonder. Technology journalists clustered around, peppering us with questions. By midday, word had spread through the summit. The Forbes reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Eliza Wright, spent over an hour interviewing me about Artscape's vision. "This isn't just entertainment," she noted, reviewing her information. "You're creating a new medium for artistic expression." "Technology and art have always evolved together," I explained. "From cave paintings to Renaissance techniques to photography. Artscape is just the next evolution, digital experiences that respond emotionally to each viewer, creating something unique every time." "And this all started in your apartment?" "A loft in Capitol Hill," I confirmed. 3 years of ramen dinners and maxed-out credit cards. Yet you turned down an acquisition offer from Marcus Winters himself. That's unusual for a first-time founder. I chose my words carefully. Artscape isn't just a business opportunity. It's a vision for how technology can enhance human creativity and emotional connection. That vision is worth building properly. Even at personal cost? I thought about my family, about the years of disapproval and dismissal. "Some things are worth the cost," I said simply. The interview continued, but I found myself distracted, scanning the crowded exhibition hall. No sign of my parents. By late afternoon, we'd begun our main presentation to a packed auditorium. I stood on stage, walking the audience through Artscape's journey and vision, demonstrating our technology to gasps and applause. And then I saw them, slipping into seats near the back. My parents, dressed formally, watching with unfamiliar expressions. Not pride exactly, but something close to wonderment. The presentation concluded to a standing ovation. As attendees filed out, many stopping to share excitement or exchange cards, I made my way toward my parents. They looked out of place among the tech crowd, but they'd come. That meant something. "You came," I said unnecessarily. "It's impressive, Riley," my father said, his voice subdued. "What you've built. It's not what I expected." Coming from Victor Chen, this was effusive praise. "The way people responded to your demonstration," my mother added, "their faces when they experienced your art." "Digital art experiences," I corrected gently. "Yes." She nodded. "It's clearly meaningful to them." Before I could respond, Marcus Winters appeared, clasping my shoulder. "Chen, spectacular presentation. You're the talk of the summit." He nodded to my parents. "Dr. and Mrs. Chen, glad you could see your daughter in action." "Mr. Winters," my father acknowledged stiffly. "Exciting times ahead," Winters continued. "Forbes is featuring Artscape in next month's innovation issue. Cover story potential from what I hear." My parents' expressions shifted subtly, the familiar calculation of status and recognition. "We're very proud," my mother said, the words sounding unpracticed from disuse. Winters excused himself to greet other investors, leaving me with my parents. "Forbes," my father said, testing the word. "Cover. Story." "Potentially," I tempered. "Nothing's confirmed." "Your friends at the club subscribe to Forbes, don't they, Victor?" my mother asked meaningfully. And there it was, the real validation. Not my vision, not the technology, not even the 50 million valuation, but the prospect of their friends, seeing their daughter on the cover of Forbes. I should have felt angry. Instead, I felt something closer to pity. They were products of their generation, their upbringing. Status and external validation were their love language. Riley, my father began hesitantly, your mother told you about our situation? I nodded. The malpractice suit. I'm sorry, Dad. He looked uncomfortable. It's significant. The practice may not survive. What will you do? I'm not sure, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. Start over, perhaps, at my age. I could see what this admission cost him. Victor Chen, always in control, always the provider, facing the unknown. Dad, Mom, I said carefully. Come by the office tomorrow. I'd like to show you something. They exchanged glances, then nodded. The next morning, I gave my parents the full tour of Artscape's headquarters. The development studio, the design lab, the testing spaces. I explained our technology in terms they could understand, showed them the market projections, introduced them to our team. Finally, I brought them to my office and closed the door. The malpractice suit, I began. Have you explored all options? My father nodded grimly. The evidence is challenging. Settlement is likely our best option, but the amount exceeds our resources. What if Artscape retained your services? I suggested. Mom as legal counsel, you as medical technology advisor for our wellness applications? They stared at me. You'd hire us? My mother asked carefully. Artscape needs experienced advisors as we scale. You both have expertise we could utilize. I met their gaze steadily. It would be a legitimate business arrangement. Consulting. Fees that could help with your settlement while providing actual value to my company. My father struggled visibly. Riley, we can't accept. It's not charity, I interrupted. It's a business proposal. Purely practical. They recognized their own words echoed back to them. For 3 years, they'd dismissed my choices as impractical dreams. Now I was offering them a practical solution using the very business they'd belittled. We would need to contribute real value, my father said finally. Not just take a check. Believe me, I'll make you earn it, I assured him. Winter's capital doesn't tolerate vanity positions. The corner of my mother's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. I suppose we raised you to be practical. After all. In my own way, I agreed. As they prepared to leave, my father paused at the door, looking back at the office, at the awards already accumulating on my shelves, the prototype displays, the team working diligently beyond the glass walls. Your grandfather would have understood this better than I did, he said unexpectedly. He was an artist in Beijing before the revolution forced him to become practical, to become a doctor. I'd never heard this story before. You never told me that? Some stories get lost when we're too focused on moving forward. He studied the digital art display on my wall. Perhaps I've been practical for too long. 2 weeks later, the Forbes issue arrived. Artscape wasn't just featured, it was the cover story, complete with my portrait and the headline, The Art of Digital Revolution, How Riley Chen is Transforming Creative Expression. I brought a copy to my parents' house, my first visit since the disastrous family dinner months earlier. My father answered the door himself, a subtle change from protocol. I thought you might want this, I said, handing him the magazine. He held it carefully, studying the cover with an expression I couldn't quite read. The neighbors will see, I said lightly. He looked up, and to my surprise, laughed, a genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. Let them, he said, opening the eye, Dr. Whiter. Come in. Your mother's making your favorite dumplings. As I stepped inside, I noticed something different in the entryway. A framed printout of Artscape's logo, positioned prominently among the family photos. My hobby had a place. In the Chen household at last. My mother's dumplings were exactly as I remembered. Delicate wrappers with perfectly crimped edges, the filling a precise balance of pork, ginger, and scallions. Some things never changed in the Chen household, even when everything else had. We sat in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room, another subtle shift in family dynamics. The Forbes magazine lay open on the counter, my face staring back at us between bites of home-cooked food. "The article is quite thorough," my mother commented, her index finger tapping beside a paragraph about Artscape's proprietary emotional response algorithms. "Though they could have mentioned your Stanford background more prominently. Some things really never changed. The technology is the story, Mom, not my credentials. Still, it adds credibility." My father cleared his throat. "The reporter contacted me." I nearly choked on a dumpling. "Eliza Wright called you? She wanted background on your upbringing." He looked almost sheepish. "I may have mentioned your childhood coding projects, the website you built for my practice when you were 14. You remembered that?" "Of course." He seemed surprised I'd ask. "It was impressive. Patients still comment on the appointment. System you designed." This was new territory. My father acknowledging my early technical abilities. For years, he'd framed my computer interests as distractions from real academic pursuits. "Dad actually kept all your science fair projects," my mother added. "The ones with the interactive displays. They're in boxes in the attic." The revelation that my parents had preserved evidence of my technical inclinations, achievements they'd dismissed as secondary to traditional academics, left me momentarily speechless. My phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. "CNN Tech wants an interview. Tomorrow. Say yes?" I showed my parents the message. "CNN?" My mother's eyebrows raised. "National exposure." "Go," my father said simply. "We'll finish the consulting paperwork another time." As I drove back to my loft that evening, I struggled to reconcile this new parental support with years of dismissal. One Forbes cover couldn't erase a lifetime of practical expectations, could it? The next morning brought Jackson to my door at an ungodly hour, carrying coffee and barely contained excitement. "CNN Tech, Riley. Do you realize what this means?" I took the coffee gratefully. "More pressure? Validation, scale, the beginning of Artscape becoming a household name." He followed me inside, already reviewing talking points on his tablet. "The anchor wants to focus on the artistic elements but also the technology architecture. We should emphasize the emotional response algorithms. That's our real innovation." "Slow down," I yawned. "What time is the interview?" 3 hours. Hair and makeup will be here in 90 minutes. "Hair and... Jackson, it's a tech interview, not the Oscars." He stopped pacing. "Riley, people are going to see you. Millions of people. This isn't just about the technology anymore. You're becoming the face of digital art innovation." The realization settled uncomfortably. I'd spent 3 years focused on building Artscape, not on becoming a public figure. The Forbes cover was one thing, but television was another level entirely. "I'm a developer, not a spokesperson." "You're the CEO," Jackson corrected. "That makes you both." The CNN interview went better than expected. The anchor was genuinely interested in Artscape's vision, asking thoughtful questions about the intersection of technology and artistic expression. I found myself relaxing as I demonstrated a portable version of our platform on a tablet, showing how digital art could respond to the viewer's emotions through subtle biometric readings. "What we're seeing is a fundamental shift in how art is experienced," I explained. "Traditional art is static, the same painting or sculpture for every viewer. Artscape creates unique experiences that evolve based on emotional response. Essentially, customizing art for each person," the anchor clarified. "More like a collaboration between artist, technology, and viewer. Every experience is unique, never to be repeated exactly the same way again." After the interview, my phone lit up with messages from colleagues, former classmates, and surprisingly distant relatives who suddenly remembered their connection to me. My mother forwarded messages from family friends who'd seen the segment. Even Ethan texted, "Didn't understand half of what you said, but you looked confident saying it. Good job." High praise from my investment banker brother, Amara called as I was heading into our office. "You were brilliant, authentic, passionate, accessible. The team is celebrating with champagne as we speak." At 10 in the morning? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and besides, CNN is a milestone. Her voice turned serious. "But that's not why I called. Have you seen the market response?" "To the interview? Already? 3 VCs have called asking for meetings. Our website traffic crashed the servers. And," she paused dramatically, "Makerson Gallery wants to discuss an installation." Makerson Gallery was the premier digital art space in Seattle, known for launching cutting-edge artists into the national spotlight. "You're kidding." "Meeting tomorrow at 9. They saw the CNN piece and called immediately." Amara's voice held a smile. "See what happens when you step into the spotlight?" The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Makerson installation evolved into a 3-month exhibition featuring Artscape's technology paired with works from 5 prominent digital artists. The Seattle Times ran a feature on our revolutionary platform transforming how art is experienced. Tech. Blogs debated our algorithms and approach. Venture capital firms circled with increasingly generous offers, forcing Marcus Winters to accelerate his timeline for our next funding round. Jackson hired 3 more developers to keep pace with our expanded roadmap. Amara brought on a PR specialist to handle the growing media requests. Through it all, I maintained our original vision, creating technology that enhanced emotional connection rather than replacing it. Each new feature, each partnership, each line of code had to serve that core purpose. One Tuesday afternoon, as I reviewed expansion plans with our growing team, Amara poked her head into the conference room. "Your mother's here." I found Grace Chen in our reception area, looking both perfectly composed and oddly out of place among the casual tech office surroundings. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine." She held up a manila folder. "I've completed the initial legal review you requested. The licensing agreements need significant revision." It took me a moment to switch gears. In the whirlwind of recent weeks, I'd almost forgotten about my proposal to retain my parents as consultants. "You actually reviewed them?" She looked mildly offended. "Of course. You're paying for my expertise, not my name." I led her to my office, clearing space on my perpetually cluttered desk. Grace Chen operated in precision and order. My creative chaos clearly made her uncomfortable. "The third-party developer agreements leave you exposed," she began, opening her folder to reveal meticulously annotated documents, particularly regarding intellectual property rights to derivative works, and the confidentiality provisions have significant gaps. For the next hour, my Harvard-educated attorney mother dissected our legal framework with surgical precision, identifying weaknesses I hadn't considered, and suggesting structural changes that would better protect Artscape's core technology. "This is thorough," I admitted, reviewing her notes. "It should be." I stayed up until 2 a.m. studying digital rights case law. She straightened a stack of papers with a precise tap. "Your industry moves quickly, but legal precedent is still catching up." The image of my mother, in her 60s, staying up late to study digital rights law for my hobby business struck me deeply. "You didn't have to do all this, Mom. You're paying me as a consultant." Her expression softened slightly. "And I wanted to understand your world better." Before I could respond, Jackson burst in without knocking, a common occurrence. "Riley, the Winters team just called. The valuation model is—" He stopped abruptly, noticing my mother. "Mrs. Chen, sorry for interrupting." "It's fine," I said. "Mom was just going through our licensing agreements." "Actually," my mother said, standing, "I should get back to your father. He has his first consultation with your wellness team this afternoon." Jackson looked between us, clearly curious, but professional enough not to ask. After my mother left, he raised an eyebrow. Your mom is reviewing our contracts? We retained my parents as consultants, I explained. Dad's advising on the wellness applications, Mom's handling legal review. Consulting, right. His tone suggested he understood the arrangement's true nature. And how's that working out? I glanced at the folder my mother had left, 60 pages of detailed legal analysis. Better than expected, actually. My father's consultation proved equally surprising. Rather than treating it as a formality, he arrived with a comprehensive analysis of how Artscape's emotional response technology could be applied to pain management and anxiety reduction in medical settings. The biometric feedback loop you've developed for art experiences, he explained during a meeting with our development team, has significant potential for therapeutic applications. He projected slides showing parallels between our artistic algorithms and emerging neurological research. The team, initially skeptical of the CEO's dad, gradually leaned forward, engaged by his insights. If we modify the input parameters, here, my father continued, circling an equation on the whiteboard, the system could potentially help patients visualize and manage chronic pain through immersive environments. Jackson shot me a look across the conference room. Your dad actually gets this. The meeting ran 2 hours over schedule, with developers and my father exchanging ideas with increasing enthusiasm. As everyone finally dispersed, my father lingered, studying the digital displays around our office. Your team is impressive, he said. They're the best in the field. They respect you. He said this with a note of discovery, as if only now realizing that others saw in me what he had missed. The tall one, Sanjay. He takes notes on everything you say. I smiled. Sanjay documents everything. It's just his process. No. My father shook his head. He writes down your ideas specifically. The others defer to your judgment, even when debating technical points. He paused. You've built something meaningful here, Riley, not just the technology. Coming from Victor Chen, who measured success in concrete achievements and status markers, this recognition of my leadership, my ability to build a team and culture, felt more significant than his acknowledgement of Artscape's financial potential. Thanks, Dad. He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the emotional moment. We should discuss the therapeutic applications further. I have additional research to share. As he left, I realized my parents were doing more than just accepting consulting checks to save their financial situation. They were genuinely engaging with my work, bringing their considerable expertise to bear on Artscape's future. Not because Forbes or CNN had validated me, but because they were finally seeing the substance beneath what they'd dismissed as a hobby. The next milestone came unexpectedly. A Thursday afternoon email from Spencer Reed, technology editor at The Wall Street Journal, requesting a conversation about emerging trends in immersive technology. I forwarded it to Amara, who called immediately. The Wall Street Journal, Riley. This isn't just another tech blog. Their business profiles reach everyone who matters in the investment world. I thought that was what Forbes did. Forbes got... You noticed. The journal will cement your legitimacy. She paused. Reed doesn't write about speculative ventures. He covers established innovators changing their industries. The distinction wasn't lost on me. Despite the growing attention, part of me still felt like that uncertain graduate school dropout, defending my choices to disapproving parents. External validation shouldn't matter, but it did. Set it up, I told her. Spencer Reed arrived at our office the following Tuesday, tall, prematurely gray with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He declined a formal tour, instead asking to observe our team at work, in their natural habitat. For 2 hours, he wandered our workspace, asking developers specific technical questions, studying our prototypes, and taking meticulous notes. Finally, he settled in a chair across from my desk. Your team mentions emotional authenticity frequently, he began, no preamble. Explain what that means in practical terms. The directness was refreshing after weeks of media gloss. Digital experiences often optimize for engagement metrics, time spent, clicks, shares. We optimize for emotional resonance, I explained. Our algorithms detect subtle biometric indicators, pupil dilation, micro-expressions, galvanic skin, response, to understand how users genuinely feel, not just what gets their attention. And this matters because technology should enhance human connection, not replace it. I leaned forward. The most meaningful experiences in our lives are emotionally authentic. Art that moves us, music that transports us, stories that transform us. They work because they create genuine emotional responses. Reed made a note. Your competitors focus on gamification, social sharing, virtual consumption. You're building something fundamentally different. They're building digital distractions. We're building digital experiences that feel real because they respond to real emotions. He studied me. You believe this. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I've dedicated the last 3 years of my life to it. Against considerable odds, from what I understand. His tone remained neutral. Stanford dropout, family opposition, funding challenges. Not the typical path. I tensed slightly. My background isn't particularly relevant to Artscape's technology. On the contrary, it's central to understanding why your approach differs so dramatically from market trends. Reed set down his pen. Innovation often comes from outsiders, Ms. Chen. People willing to question established wisdom. The conversation shifted to market potential, scaling challenges, and competitive dynamics. Reed's questions were incisive, occasionally uncomfortable, always thoughtful. When he finally stood to leave, his expression revealed nothing about his impressions. One last question, he said at the door. What would you do differently if you were starting Artscape today? I considered carefully. I'd trust my instincts sooner. I spent too much time trying to translate our vision into terms others would understand, instead of showing them what they couldn't yet imagine. Reed nodded once, thanked me for my time, and left. Well? Jackson demanded the moment Reed's car pulled away. How'd it go? I have no idea, I admitted. He's either going to write that we're revolutionary or delusional. The answer came a week later. The Wall Street Journal's weekend edition featured a 4-page spread on the emotion. Economy, with Artscape as the centerpiece. Reed's analysis was thorough, balanced, and ultimately revelatory. While tech giants race to capture user attention through increasingly sophisticated engagement tactics, Chen's Artscape has pursued a fundamentally different path: technology that responds to authentic emotional connection rather than manufacturing it. The result is not merely another digital platform, but potentially a new medium for human expression, one that enhances rather than replaces our capacity for genuine emotional experience. The article included technical analysis, market projections, and comparative frameworks positioning Artscape at the forefront of what Reed termed humanistic technology. But the passage that caught my attention came near the end. Chen's journey from academic dropout to industry pioneer illustrates a central paradox of innovation. Breakthrough ideas often require rejecting conventional wisdom. While established, players optimize existing paradigms. Chen questioned whether digital experiences must inherently diminish emotional authenticity. Her answer, technology designed to amplify genuine human connection, may represent the next evolution in how we interact with digital environments. I read the article 3 times, each reading revealing new layers of Reed's analysis. This wasn't just validation of Artscape's business potential. It was recognition of our philosophical approach, our fundamental belief that technology should enhance human experience rather than replace it. My phone rang. Marcus Winters. I assume you've seen the journal, he said without greeting. Just finished it. Reed doesn't gush. This is as close as he gets to endorsement. Winters cleared his throat. The market is responding. We've had 7 acquisition inquiries since the digital edition went live last night. My stomach tightened. We're not selling. Of course not. But valuation just jumped significantly. He paused. The Makerson installation opens next week. Perfect timing to announce our expansion funding. I'm thinking $50 million at a $200 million valuation. The numbers felt surreal. Just months ago, we'd been celebrating our first $5 million in funding. Now Winters was casually discussing figures that would make Artscape one of the fastest-growing startups in Seattle's history. That's aggressive, I managed. It's appropriate. Winters sounded impatient. Reed's analysis positions you perfectly. Technology with emotional depth, not just another engagement platform. The market's hungry for that narrative. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at the journal spread. 3 years earlier, I'd walked away from Stanford with nothing but belief in a vision most people couldn't yet see. I'd faced family disappointment, financial uncertainty, and countless technical obstacles. Now that vision was becoming reality. Not just as a business, but as a philosophy about how technology could enhance human experience rather than diminish it. My phone buzzed with another call. My father. I read the journal article, he said without preamble. What did you think? Reed captured something important about your approach. My father sounded thoughtful. The paragraph about technology amplifying human connection rather than replacing it. That's our core philosophy. It reminded me of something. He paused. When I first came to America, technology in medicine was advancing rapidly. Many colleagues embraced it uncritically. More tests, more machines, more data. I always insisted that technology should enhance the doctor-patient relationship, not replace it. The parallel struck me forcefully. Had my father's approach to medicine influenced my approach to technology without either of us realizing it? I never thought about it that way, I admitted. Neither had I. His voice held a note of discovery. Perhaps we're not so different after all. Before I could process this unexpected connection, my office door burst open. Amara rushed in, her expression urgent. Riley, you need to see this. She thrust her tablet toward me. On screen was an article from a prominent tech blog. Emotion Manipulation, the Dark Side of Responsive Technology. The piece questioned the ethics of technology that detected and responded to emotional states, citing privacy concerns and potential psychological manipulation. Artscape featured prominently as an example of platforms gathering intimate biometric data under the guise of artistic experience. They're completely mischaracterizing our technology, I said, scanning the article. We don't store personal emotional data or build user profiles. It gets worse. Amara swiped to another article. Digital Surveillance, How Your Feelings Become. Data. This is ridiculous. Our emotional response algorithms work locally on the device. We don't transmit or retain individual data. 3 more pieces like this appeared in the last hour. Amara looked grim. Someone's orchestrating a narrative shift. My phone buzzed again. Jackson, texting from the development floor. Kent from Horizon Tech is here. Unscheduled. Says it's urgent. Horizon Tech was our largest competitor in the digital experience space. Their CEO showing up unannounced immediately after a coordinated media attack couldn't be coincidence. Send him to the conference room, I texted back. I'll be there in 5 minutes. What's going on? Amara asked. I think we're about to find out. Kent Matthews waited in our main conference room, impeccably dressed and unnervingly calm. At 45, he'd built Horizon Tech into a billion-dollar digital entertainment platform focused on gamified experiences and social sharing. Everything Artscape wasn't. Riley, he greeted me with practiced warmth. Thanks for seeing me without an appointment. Hard to ignore the CEO of Horizon appearing. In my office the same day, coordinated hit pieces target our technology. Matthews raised an eyebrow. Straight to business. I appreciate that. I remained standing. What do you want, Kent? To make you an offer. He placed a leather portfolio on the table. Horizon will acquire Artscape for $300 million. Full cash consideration, immediate closure. The figure, significantly higher than even Winter's aggressive valuation, momentarily stunned me. Why would Horizon pay that much for technology you're simultaneously attacking in the press? Matthews didn't bother denying the connection. The articles raise legitimate questions about a technology category we're both developing. Questions better addressed inside a larger organization with established privacy protocols and ethical frameworks. Convenient timing. Smart strategy, he countered. The Wall Street Journal piece positioned you as the ethical alternative to engagement-focused platforms like ours. We're simply highlighting the complexity of that claim. The calculation was clear. Create public concern about emotional response. Technology, position Horizon as the responsible steward for such sensitive innovation, and pressure Artscape to sell before the narrative damaged our reputation. Not interested. I moved toward the door. You haven't reviewed the terms. I don't need to. Artscape isn't for sale. Matthew's friendly demeanor cooled. The concerns raised in those articles will gain traction, Riley. Emotional data is sensitive. Territory. Regulators will take notice. Investors will get nervous. Our technology doesn't store or exploit emotional data. It responds to it in real time, locally, to enhance the user experience. A nuance lost on most readers. He stood, straightening his jacket. Today's offer is generous. Tomorrow's may not be. After Matthews left, I gathered our leadership team for an emergency meeting. Jackson, Amara, our lead developer Sanjay, and CFO Natalie crowded into my office. Horizon just offered $300 million to acquire us, I announced without preamble. I declined. Without consulting us? Natalie looked shocked. The offer comes with coordinated media attacks questioning our ethical framework, Amara explained. Classic pressure tactic. Jackson whistled low. $300 million, though. For technology that's potentially worth billions, Sanjay noted quietly. If Horizon is willing to pay that much now, they see immense future value. Or they see a threat, I added. Our approach fundamentally challenges their engagement-based business model. Natalie raised a practical concern. Winters will want to know about this offer. Winters will tell us to counter, not sell, Jackson predicted. He sees the same. Long-term potential we do. We need to address the ethical questions directly, Amara insisted. Get ahead of this narrative before it spreads. I nodded. Prepare a detailed technical white paper explaining our privacy architecture and ethical framework. Emphasize local processing, data minimization, and user control. And if that doesn't stop the narrative, Natalie asked, then we demonstrate it. I turned to Sanjay. How quickly can we release an open-source version of our core privacy architecture? Let developers and security experts verify our claims directly, Sanjay considered. 2 weeks for a properly documented release. Less if we cut corners, but I wouldn't recommend it. 2 weeks it is. Transparency is our best defense. As the IFAO team dispersed to implement our response strategy, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Saw the negative articles. How can I help? The simple offer of support, so different from the dismissal I'd faced for years, affected me more than I expected. Just months ago, my father would have cited these challenges as evidence that my hobby wasn't a serious career path. Now he was offering to stand with me. I texted back, "Thanks, Dad. We're handling it. But I appreciate the offer." His response came quickly. "Dinner tonight? Your mother's worried." The thought of my mother worrying about my business reputation rather than pushing me to abandon it for a real job was another unexpected shift. "Dinner sounds good," I replied. That evening, as we sat around their kitchen table, I explained the situation with Horizon Tech and our response strategy. "This Matthews person," my mother said, frowning, "he orchestrated media attacks to devalue your company, then appeared with an acquisition offer. That's borderline illegal." Borderline being the operative word, I sighed. "It's carefully calibrated to pressure us without crossing legal lines." My father considered this. "When a competitor resorts to such tactics, it means they fear you, or they see value worth taking," my mother added. "Both, I think," I admitted. "Our approach challenges their fundamental business model." My father nodded slowly. "In medicine, when established practices feel threatened by new approaches, the first response is often dismissal, then attack. It means you're on the right track. The question," my mother said practically, "is how to counter their narrative effectively." I explained our transparency strategy, the technical white paper and open source release. "Good start," she agreed, "but insufficient alone. You need third-party validation." "Independent experts confirming your ethical framework," my father added, "preferably from academia or established research institutions." They were right, of course. My parents' decades of professional experience navigating complex institutional landscapes offered perspective our younger team lacked. By the end of dinner, we'd outlined a comprehensive counter-strategy incorporating their suggestions. As I prepared to leave, my father disappeared briefly to his study, returning with an old leather-bound journal. "I found this recently," he said, handing it to me. "My father's notes from his art studies in Beijing, before the revolution forced him to change paths." I opened the journal carefully. Inside were delicate drawings, color studies, and handwritten notes in Chinese characters, too complex for my limited language skills. "Your grandfather believed art was about emotional truth," my father explained. "He taught me to look for it in everything, even after he could no longer create art himself." He turned to a specific page where a faded drawing showed a traditional landscape with detailed notes alongside it. "He wrote here about how different viewers might experience the same landscape differently depending on their emotional state," my father translated. "How the artist must understand this variation in perception." The parallel to Artscape's responsive environment technology was striking. "Perhaps your innovative approach isn't entirely new," he said quietly. "Perhaps it remembers something essential that technology has forgotten." As I drove home that night, my grandfather's journal carefully placed on the passenger seat, I reflected on how dramatically circumstances had changed. 6 months earlier, my parents had dismissed my work as a hobby and pressured me to join the real world. Now they were offering strategic advice, professional insights, and even connecting my vision to family heritage I'd never fully known. The path hadn't been straightforward. It had taken external validation, Forbes, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, to initially shift their perspective. But something deeper had evolved since then. Genuine understanding of the vision driving Artscape, not just recognition of its commercial success. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Spencer Reed from The Wall Street Journal, responding to our request for a follow-up conversation addressing the ethical questions raised by competitors. "Interesting developments. Available tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring your technical documentation. Emotional manipulation claims deserve thorough examination, for better or worse." The battle for Artscape's narrative, and perhaps its future, was just beginning. But for the first time, I faced such challenges with my family standing beside me rather than questioning my path. Tomorrow would bring new struggles. Tonight, I had my grandfather's artistic wisdom to explore, a connection to the past that somehow illuminated the future I was building. Spencer Reed arrived precisely at 2 p.m., carrying nothing but a small voice recorder and the same penetrating gaze that had dissected Artscape during his first visit. I'd assembled our core team, Jackson with his technical expertise, Amara to address communication strategy, Sanjay to explain our privacy architecture, and Natalie for financial context. Together, we represented a united front against Horizon's coordinated attacks. Quite the war room, Reed observed, taking in our preparation. We believe in transparency, I replied, sliding a folder toward him. Our complete technical documentation, privacy frameworks, and ethical guidelines, everything on the record. Reed left the folder untouched. I've reviewed the articles claiming Artscape engages in emotional manipulation, compelling narrative, if somewhat light on technical specifics. Because it's fundamentally false, Sanjay interjected, unable to contain his engineer's frustration with technical inaccuracies. Our system processes emotional responses locally on the device with ephemeral data handling. We don't build emotional profiles or retain individualized response patterns. Reed nodded. So you claim. But the broader question remains interesting. Should any technology, even one with strong privacy safeguards, detect and respond to emotional states? That's like asking if mirrors should reflect our facial expressions, I countered. Humans naturally respond to each other's emotional cues. Our technology simply extends that natural responsiveness to digital experiences. With one critical difference, Reed noted. Humans don't algorithmically optimize those responses. For the next hour, Reed probed every aspect of our technology, business model, and ethical framework. His questions were incisive, occasionally uncomfortable, but notably free from the presumptive biases evident in the attack articles. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding the nuances that Horizon's media campaign had deliberately obscured. One final question, Reed said as our session concluded. Are you aware of who owns the publications that ran the original critical pieces? I exchanged glances with Amara, who had been tracking the media coverage. Smaller tech blogs, primarily. Independent, as far as we know. Reed's expression revealed nothing. Interesting assumption. Thank you for your time. After he left, Amara turned to me. What was that about ownership? I'm not sure, I admitted. But Reed doesn't ask idle questions. The answer arrived the following morning in the form of a Wall Street Journal exclusive. Digital Manipulation, the Manufactured Controversy. Reed's investigation revealed that 3 of the 5 publications that had published criticisms of Artscape's technology had received significant funding through investment vehicles linked to Horizon Tech. The remaining 2 had recently signed lucrative advertising deals with Horizon's marketing partners. Reed didn't directly accuse Matthews of orchestrating a hit campaign, but the connections were unmistakable. More importantly, his piece thoroughly explained the technical reality of Artscape's privacy-focused architecture, contrasting it with the data harvesting approaches common among major platforms, including Horizon's. The article concluded with a statement that sent our office into celebration. Innovation often threatens established interests, particularly when it challenges fundamental business models. Artscape's approach, prioritizing emotional authenticity and privacy by design, represents a potential paradigm shift in how digital experiences are created and monetized. Whether this shift threatens or complements existing platforms remains to be seen, but attempts to discredit emerging technologies through misleading narratives ultimately undermine the informed market competition essential to technological progress. Jackson burst into my office waving his tablet. Reed just destroyed Horizon's entire attack strategy. Have you seen the fallout online? Tech Twitter is exploding, Amara confirmed, scrolling through her phone. The backlash against Horizon is brutal. Digital ethics organizations are calling for FTC review of their market practices. My phone rang. Marcus Winters. I assume you've seen Reed's follow-up, he said without preamble. Masterful counter-strategy, getting him involved. We simply offered transparency. Reed did the investigative work himself. Regardless, Matthews overplayed his hand. We've received 2 new investment inquiries this morning from firms that previously aligned with Horizon. Winters paused. And I've heard Matthews's board is asking uncomfortable questions about his tactics. I don't want this to become a personal vendetta, I cautioned. Our focus should be building our technology, not fighting competitors. Admirable sentiment, Winters said, not entirely concealing his amusement at my idealism. But in this industry, your competitors determine the battlefield, not your preferences. Matthews chose media manipulation. Reed just shifted the terrain. After hanging up, I stared out my office window at the Seattle skyline, contemplating how quickly Artscape had gone from obscure startup to central player in a high-stakes industry battle. 3 years of working in relative anonymity had given way to Forbes covers, Wall Street Journal investigations, and competitors willing to orchestrate media campaigns to undermine us. My phone buzzed with a text message. Zoe, my sister, reaching out unprompted for the first time in months. Saw the WSJ piece. Matthews is getting roasted at the Bar Association lunch. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Dinner soon? The casual invitation, acknowledging Artscape's legitimacy without qualification, marked another subtle shift in family dynamics. Before I could respond, another text arrived. This one from Ethan. My firm's tech analysts just issued a buy recommendation on any future Artscape public offering. Ironic considering they wouldn't even look at your business plan 3 years ago. Their loss. Acknowledgement from my professionally skeptical siblings felt like the completion of a circle. External validation had finally penetrated the Chen family's protective barrier of practical expectations. Later that afternoon, a courier delivered a package to our office. Inside was a vintage art book on Chinese landscape painting with a note, in my father's precise handwriting. Your grandfather would have understood your vision. So do I, finally. Dad. The simple acknowledgement, not of Artscape's commercial success, but of the vision driving it, meant more than any magazine cover or investment valuation. My moment of reflection was interrupted by Amara bursting into my office. Riley, Makerson Gallery just called. They want to expand our exhibition space by 3 times and extend the run to 6 months. The Horizon controversy has generated unprecedented interest. That's great, but... And there's more. She couldn't contain her excitement. Ted wants you to give a main stage talk on the future of emotional technology at their annual conference. Ted? As in the TED Talks? The main event. 18 minutes that could define Artscape's place in the broader cultural conversation. About technology and humanity. Amara studied my expression. Why don't you look excited? I struggled to articulate the complex emotions swirling beneath the surface. I am. It's just... When I started Artscape, it was about the technology, the vision. Now it's becoming about me personally. Covers, interviews, TED stages. That's how visionary companies grow, Riley. They become inseparable from their founders' stories. Amara sat across from me. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Sarah Blakely, their personal journeys became part of their company's narratives. I'm not comfortable being the face of a movement. Too late. She slid her tablet toward me, showing a business magazine's newest headline. Riley Chen, leading the emotion revolution. I groaned. Revolutionary seems a bit dramatic. It's accurate, a voice said from the doorway. Jackson stood there, tablet in hand. The open source release of our privacy framework just hit 10,000 downloads in the first hour. Developers are already building on it. The realization that our approach was spreading beyond Artscape itself, becoming a framework others could adopt and extend, shifted my perspective. Perhaps this wasn't just about personal recognition, but about advancing a philosophy of technology that prioritized human emotional experience. Fine, I conceded. Tell Ted yes. But I want the talk to focus on the vision, not my personal story. The vision is your personal story, Amara pointed out. Your rejection of traditional success metrics, Your belief that technology should enhance human connection rather than exploit it. That's what makes Artscape different. She was right, of course. The vision I'd fought for, against family expectations, financial pressures, and market skepticism, had always been personal. Perhaps embracing that reality was the next step in Artscape's evolution. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. The Makerson Gallery installation opened to critical acclaim and unprecedented crowds. Our development team raced to complete the open-source release of our privacy architecture while simultaneously preparing for the next major version of our core platform. Amara coordinated an expanding media strategy that carefully balanced increasing visibility with protecting our core message. Through it all, Marcus Winters orchestrated preparations for our expansion funding round, now positioned to significantly exceed his original projections. Potential investors competed for allocation in what was becoming one of Seattle's most anticipated private funding events. One Wednesday morning, as I reviewed TED Talk outlines with Amara, my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "Victor Chen on line 1 says it's important." My father rarely called during business hours, maintaining strict separation between family and work, a boundary I'd grown to appreciate as our professional relationship evolved. "Dad, is everything okay?" His voice sounded strained. "Riley, I need to see you. Today, if possible." "Of course. Is Mom all right? Are you—" "We're fine. It's a business matter." He hesitated. "The malpractice situation has developed complications." An hour later, I sat across from my parents in my father's home office, a space I'd rarely entered growing up, the inner sanctum of Victor Chen's professional life. Now he sat behind his desk, shoulders uncharacteristically tense, while my mother stood beside him in silent support. "The situation is worse than we initially understood," my father began, his clinical tone belied by the tension in his jaw. "The lawsuit now includes allegations of systematic billing irregularities spanning 5 years." "Billing irregularities?" I repeated. "You're the most meticulous person I know." "The issue isn't with my records," he clarified. "It's with the practice management system implemented by my former administrator. There appear to be algorithm-driven optimizations that systematically upcoded certain procedures." My mother interjected, her attorney's precision clarifying. The technical explanation. The software was designed to identify opportunities for legitimate higher billing codes based on documentation. But an audit suggests it may have pushed beyond regulatory boundaries in thousands of cases. "Even though you didn't design the system, as practice owner, you bear ultimate responsibility," I realized. My father nodded grimly. "The potential liability exceeds $10 million, far beyond our insurance coverage and personal assets combined." The magnitude stunned me. My father's practice, built over 30 years of dedicated work, faced not just financial ruin, but potential regulatory sanctions that could destroy his professional legacy. "What's the timeline?" I asked. "The formal complaint will be filed next week." My mother's expression remained professionally composed, but I could see the concern beneath. "We'll have 30 days to respond." "And your legal strategy?" "Limited options," she admitted. "The evidence of algorithmic upcoding is compelling, even if Victor had no knowledge of it. The best outcome would be a settlement, but the amounts discussed are—" She trailed off. "Beyond our capacity," my father finished. "We would lose everything. The house, retirement accounts, even your mother's partnership stake in her firm could be at risk." I processed this information, considering implications and options. "Why are you telling me this? Surely not to ask for financial help." I knew my parents too well to believe they'd come seeking a bailout, even in dire circumstances. "No," my father said firmly, "absolutely not. We're informing you because this will become public soon, and it may affect Artscape by association." "The Chen name will be in headlines," my mother explained. "In the current environment, with Artscape receiving significant attention, the connection could be made. They weren't asking for money. They were warning me about potential reputation damage to my company from their crisis, putting my interests ahead of their own desperate situation. I appreciate the warning, I said carefully, but I'm more concerned about you both right now. There must be options we haven't considered. My father shook his head. We've explored everything, even liquidating all assets. We can't approach the potential judgment. What about the administrator who implemented this system? Surely they bear responsibility. Disappeared, my mother said grimly. Apparently left the country 6 months ago when the audit began. The software company claims their system was misused, not defective. I considered the technical aspects. This software made automated coding decisions based on medical documentation? Supposedly to optimize legitimate reimbursement, my father confirmed. Every practice uses similar systems now, but this one apparently crossed legal boundaries. Would you have access to the algorithm's decision patterns? The actual code that determined when to upcode it? My parents exchanged glances. Possibly, my mother said. Why? Because algorithms leave fingerprints, I explained. If the system was designed to deliberately push beyond regulatory boundaries, that would shift liability from the user to the developer. My father straightened slightly, the first hint of hope entering his expression. You think you could analyze the software? Not me personally, but I know people who could. I was already mentally assembling a team, Sanjay for algorithm analysis, Natalie for healthcare compliance perspective, and potentially outside experts in medical billing systems. The software company has far more resources than we do, my mother cautioned. Their legal team has already prepared defenses claiming user misapplication. Then we need evidence that the algorithm itself was designed to suggest improper codes, I said, my mind racing through technical approaches. If we can demonstrate that the system was fundamentally flawed by design, that changes the entire liability framework. For the first time in our adult relationship, my parents looked to me for solutions rather than questioning my judgment. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their practical, traditional careers now threatened by technology they didn't fully understand, while my impractical path potentially offered their best hope. Let me make some calls, I said, standing. We'll need the system documentation, access logs, and any communications with the software company about implementation. As I prepared to leave, my father stopped me with an uncharacteristic gesture, a hand on my shoulder. Riley, whatever happens, your mother and I want you to know something. His voice carried unusual emotion. We were wrong about your choices. The courage it took to follow your vision, to build something meaningful against conventional wisdom. We underestimated that. Whatever happens with our situation, we're proud of who you've become. The acknowledgement, delivered not in the glow of magazine covers and investment valuations, but in the shadow of their greatest professional crisis, felt like the completion of a circle. Not conditional validation based on external success markers, but genuine recognition of the principles that had guided my unconventional path. Back at Artscape, I assembled a small crisis team, carefully selecting people with both technical expertise and discretion. Sanjay for his algorithm analysis skills, Natalie for her healthcare background before joining Artscape, and Jackson as my operational partner. We need absolute confidentiality, I emphasized. This isn't officially an Artscape project. Consider it a personal favor to me. Your father's practice is in trouble? Jackson clarified, always quick to grasp essentials. I nodded. Potentially catastrophic liability from an automated billing system. We need to determine if the algorithm was designed to suggest improper coding. Sanjay immediately grasped the technical approach. We'll need to reverse engineer the decision trees, analyze pattern recognition frameworks, and identify any deliberate boundary pushing in the code base. Can we do this legally? Natalie asked. Decompiling proprietary software could violate terms of service. My father was a licensed user, I explained. We're analyzing the system as part of a legal defense, which creates certain exemptions. But we'll need to document everything meticulously. For the next 3 days, while maintaining my regular artscape responsibilities, I coordinated what amounted to a forensic investigation of the medical billing software. Sanjay assembled a secure testing environment isolated from Artscape's systems. Natalie consulted healthcare billing experts who could interpret the algorithm's suggestions against regulatory standards. On the 4th day, at 2 a.m., Sanjay called. "I found it," he said without preamble, his voice carrying the particular excitement engineers reserve for solving complex puzzles. "The algorithm has an embedded optimization function that deliberately suggests the highest plausible code regardless of documentation adequacy." "Can you prove it was designed that way? Not just a bug?" I asked, instantly alert despite the hour. "Better than that. I found developer comments in the code. Listen to this. Implement aggressive suggestion protocol version 2.0, modified to avoid explicit regulatory flags while maximizing code optimization. It's dated 3 years ago, well before your father implemented the system. The smoking gun was even more definitive than I'd hoped. Clear evidence that the software company had deliberately designed their algorithm to push billing boundaries while maintaining plausible deniability. There's more, Sanjay continued. The system included an automatic update module that periodically adjusted the algorithm based on audit patterns. It was designed to learn from and avoid detection. By morning, we had compiled a comprehensive technical analysis documenting how the billing software had been deliberately designed to suggest improper codes while maintaining plausible deniability for both the company and users. The evidence strongly suggested that the practice administrator who had implemented the system may have been incentivized by the software company to adopt their optimization packages. I delivered our findings to my parents that afternoon. My mother, her legal mind immediately grasping the implications, nearly dropped the technical documentation. "This shifts the entire liability framework," she whispered, "from practitioner negligence to software developer fraud." My father studied the annotated code samples, where Sanjay had highlighted the damning developer comments. They knew exactly what they were doing. "The question," I said carefully, "is how to leverage this evidence most effectively." My mother was already thinking strategically, not through conventional channels. The software company would bury this in years of litigation, claiming the code was taken out of context. "We need to change the battlefield," my father agreed, unconsciously echoing Marcus Winter's earlier observation about competitive dynamics. "What about Reed at the Wall Street Journal?" I suggested. "He specializes in technology ethics and has demonstrated independence." My parents exchanged glances, silently communicating in the shorthand of their decades-long partnership. "A risky approach," my mother acknowledged, "but potentially effective if the evidence is compelling enough." "Is it?" I asked, looking to them both. My father nodded slowly. "This isn't just about our situation anymore. This software is used by hundreds of practices nationwide. If it's systematically suggesting improper billing to maximize revenue, then it's a story about technology ethics, healthcare integrity, and algorithmic accountability," I finished. Exactly the issues Reed specializes in covering. The decision was made. With careful preparation and thorough legal review, we approached Spencer Reed with our findings, not as a personal plea for help, but as a legitimate news story at the intersection of technology ethics and healthcare regulation. Reed's response was characteristically measured. If verified, this represents a significant story about algorithmic accountability in healthcare. I'll need independent technical experts to confirm your analysis. We anticipated that, I replied, providing contact information for 3 renowned algorithm ethics specialists who had agreed to review our findings. A week later, the Wall Street Journal published Reed's investigative piece, Code of Deception: How Billing Algorithms Push Medical Practices Beyond Legal Boundaries. The article meticulously documented how Medimax Solutions, the software company behind my father's billing system, had deliberately designed algorithms that suggested improper billing codes while maintaining plausible deniability. Reed's piece went beyond my father's specific case, identifying dozens of practices nationwide facing similar regulatory scrutiny due to the same software. He included statements from former Medimax employees confirming that the company had internally referred to their optimization module as the gray area maximizer. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. By evening, the Healthcare Finance Regulatory Authority had announced a formal investigation into Medimax. 3 major health systems suspended use of their software pending review. Class action attorneys began organizing affected medical practices into potential plaintiffs. Most importantly for my parents, the narrative had completely shifted. My father was no longer portrayed as potentially negligent, but as one of many victims of algorithmic deception. The original plaintiffs' attorneys reached out through intermediaries, suggesting interest in joining forces against Medimax rather than pursuing individual practitioners. My mother called that evening, her voice carrying an unfamiliar emotion. Relief tinged with wonder. "The plaintiff's attorney just contacted us," she said. "They're discussing adding Medimax as a primary defendant and potentially reducing claims against individual practices." "That's excellent news," I replied, careful not to sound triumphant. "Riley," she paused, "what you did, not just the technical analysis, but understanding how to change the narrative, it was remarkable." "I had good teachers," I said simply. "You and Dad taught me to seek underlying causes, not just symptoms." "Perhaps," she acknowledged, "but we never fully appreciated how you applied those lessons in your own way." After hanging up, I sat in my office, watching Seattle's lights emerge against the darkening sky. The journey from family disappointment to professional respect had taken an unexpected route. Not through awards or magazine covers or investment valuations, though those had played their part, but through applying my technological understanding to solve a problem beyond their expertise. In helping save my father's practice and professional reputation, I demonstrated the practical value of the very skills and perspectives they had once dismissed as impractical. The power dynamic had shifted not through confrontation, but through contribution. My phone rang. Marcus Winters again, his timing uncanny as always. "Reed's healthcare algorithm piece is creating waves far beyond medical circles," he said without preamble. "The broader implications for algorithmic accountability are drawing attention from regulators looking at tech platforms generally." "That wasn't my intention," I admitted. "It was a specific situation with specific harms. Intent rarely matters in these scenarios." Winters sounded unusually philosophical. "You've inadvertently positioned Artscape as a counterpoint, a company built on algorithmic transparency and ethical data handling, just as the industry faces increasing scrutiny." He wasn't wrong. The contrast between Medimax's deliberately deceptive algorithms and Artscape's open-source privacy framework couldn't be more striking. "Sometimes the most powerful positioning isn't planned," Winters continued. "Our funding round was already oversubscribed. After Reed's piece, we're turning away major firms. Everyone wants to back the ethical algorithm company." The irony wasn't lost on me. By helping my parents navigate a crisis created by deceptive technology, I'd inadvertently strengthened Artscape's market position as a trustworthy alternative in an industry increasingly questioned for its ethical practices. My assistant knocked gently, then entered with a small package. "This just arrived for you. Messenger said it required personal delivery." Inside was a small wooden box with intricate hand-carved details. A note accompanied it in my father's handwriting. "This belonged to your grandfather. He kept his most precious brushes in it. Now it should hold whatever tools matter most to you. With admiration, Dad." The gesture, acknowledging both my heritage and my chosen path, moved me deeply. My grandfather's artistic tools had given way to my digital ones, but the creative lineage remained unbroken. My phone buzzed with another call, this time from Kent Matthews, Horizon's CEO. "Impressive move with the MetaMax story," he said when I answered, his tone suggesting genuine respect rather than the calculated warmth of our previous interaction. "Changing the narrative through investigative journalism instead of direct confrontation. I underestimated you." "It wasn't a competitive strategy," I replied truthfully. "It was about exposing harmful technology practices. Intentional or not, you've reshaped the competitive landscape." Matthews paused. "Our acquisition offer stands, though I suspect the price now needs revision upward. Artscape isn't for sale, Kent, not at any price." "Everyone has a number, Riley. This isn't about numbers. It's about vision, about building technology that enhances human experience rather than exploiting it." After hanging up, I realized how fundamentally my language had changed. 3 years ago, defending my decision to leave Stanford and launch Artscape, I'd struggled to articulate the vision in terms my family could understand. Now, the words came naturally, with conviction born of building something real against significant odds. My phone buzzed yet again, a text from Amara. "Ted confirmed main stage opening slot. They're positioning your talk as the future of ethical technology. Also, Time Magazine requesting interview for potential profile. Where are you?" Where was I? Physically in my office, surrounded by evidence of Artscape's growing success and influence. Metaphorically, at a turning point, no longer defending my vision against skepticism, but leading a movement gaining momentum beyond anything I'd imagined. I texted back, "Still at the office. Set up the Time interview for next week." And call. "My parents. I want to invite them to TED." The symmetry felt right. They had attended countless academic ceremonies and professional milestones for my siblings. Now, they would witness my equivalent achievement. Not a diploma or partnership announcement, but a vision taking flight in ways that might ultimately prove more significant. As Seattle's evening lights reflected against low-hanging clouds, I opened my grandfather's brushbox, running my fingers along the smooth interior worn by decades of artistic tools. Inside, I placed the prototype emotional response sensor from Artscape's first working model, the technological brush that had started everything. Old and new, artistic heritage and technological innovation, family tradition and personal vision. No longer in conflict but in conversation across generations. The circle, at last, felt complete. The TED stage was both smaller and more intimidating than I'd imagined. From the audience, these talks appeared to unfold in expansive spaces, but, standing in the wings, waiting for my introduction, I faced a tight red circle surrounded by darkness and hundreds of expectant faces. 2 minutes, a production assistant whispered, adjusting my microphone one final time. I scanned the audience, finding my parents in the third row, my mother impeccably dressed, my father characteristically rigid in his posture. Beside them sat Jackson and Amara, my first believers when the vision was nothing but sketches and code. Marcus Winters occupied an aisle seat near the front, his presence both supportive and evaluative. The host's voice echoed through the hall. "Our opening speaker is redefining how technology interfaces with human emotion. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Artscape, Riley Chen." The spotlight found me as I walked to center stage. For a moment, I remembered standing in my parents' formal dining room 3 years earlier, defending my decision to drop out of Stanford's graduate program. The journey from that lonely position to this global platform hadn't been linear, but the vision had remained constant. "Technology should enhance human connection, not replace it," I began, the words projecting more confidence than I felt. Yet, most digital experiences today optimize for engagement metrics rather than emotional authenticity. We measure success by time spent, not value created. By attention captured, not connection fostered. The audience, technology leaders, entrepreneurs, researchers, cultural figures, leaned forward slightly, a subtle collective shift that suggested resonance. At Artscape, we've asked a different question. What if digital experiences could respond to how we actually feel, rather than simply what we click? For the next 17 minutes, I explained our vision of emotionally responsive technology, interfaces that adapted to subtle biometric indicators, creating experiences that felt genuinely personal without exploiting personal data. I demonstrated how our open-source privacy framework maintained user control while enabling emotional responsiveness. This isn't about manipulating emotions, I emphasized. It's about acknowledging them, creating digital spaces that respect how humans actually experience the world. As I concluded, the auditorium fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting in applause. From my position on stage, I could see my father actually smiling, a rare public display of emotion from a man who prized composure. My mother sat straighter, a gesture I recognized as her version of pride. Backstage, congratulations flowed from other speakers and TED curators. Revolutionary approach, said a prominent AI ethicist. Finally, someone thinking about technology in human terms, commented a neuroscientist scheduled to speak the following day. Marcus Winters appeared, navigating through the well-wishers with characteristic purpose. Outstanding presentation, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Perfectly positioned Artscape as a thought leader rather than just another platform. That wasn't the goal, I admitted. I just wanted to articulate the vision clearly. The clearer the vision, the stronger the market position. Winters checked his phone. The talk is already trending. Footage goes live online tomorrow, but clips are circulating now. Funding round officially closes next week, but we're already oversubscribed by 300%. Before I could respond, my parents approached, their expressions conveying more than words could. My father reached out, not for a handshake, but an actual embrace. You were magnificent, he said simply. The audience was completely engaged, my mother added, her analytical mind still assessing performance metrics even in emotional moments. The standing ovation was immediate and universal. Thank you for coming, I said, genuinely moved by their presence. It meant a lot to see you in the audience. We wouldn't have missed it, my father replied, the sincerity in his voice marking how far we'd come from the days when he'd dismissed my work as a hobby. The moment was interrupted by my phone buzzing insistently. Multiple notifications in rapid succession. Jackson appeared, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Riley, we need to talk. Now. Something in his tone made the celebration evaporate instantly. I excused myself from my parents and Winters, following Jackson to a quiet corner backstage. What's happened? It's Sanjay. Jackson handed me his tablet. This just went live on TechCrunch. The headline struck like a physical blow. Artscape's lead developer departs for Horizon Tech. This can't be right, I said, scanning the article with growing disbelief. Sanjay was in our strategic planning meeting yesterday. He's leading the next generation development team. He cleared out his desk last night after everyone left. Didn't say a word to anyone. Jackson's voice held both anger and betrayal. According to this, he's taking a chief innovation officer role at Horizon with a compensation package worth 8 figures. I read further, my stomach tightening with each paragraph. The article quoted Sanjay praising Horizon's commitment to bringing emotional response, technology to a broader audience, and Kent Matthews welcoming one of the industry's leading architects of effective computing. Matthews orchestrated this, I realized. The timing, right after the TED Talk when we're most visible. It gets worse, Jackson swiped to another article. Horizon just announced Horizon Feel, an emotional response platform rolling out next quarter. The description of Horizon Feel bore unmistakable similarities to Artscape's core technology, not identical enough to trigger clear intellectual property concerns, but close enough that Sanjay's knowledge of our architecture and roadmap would give Horizon a significant advantage in rapid implementation. They can't just copy our approach, I protested. Our core algorithms are protected. They don't need to copy exactly. Sanjay knows which paths worked and which failed. He can help them avoid all the dead ends we encountered over 3 years of development. Jackson ran a hand through his hair in frustration. They'll compress our learning curve from years to months. My phone buzzed again. Amara, texting from the auditorium. Have you seen the news? Investors starting to ask questions. The celebration of the TED Talk had evaporated, replaced by the most significant crisis Artscape had faced. Not just the loss of a key technical leader, but the potential acceleration of our largest competitor's entry into our market segment with insider knowledge of our approach. We need to get back to Seattle immediately, I decided. Assemble the leadership team, review all projects Sanjay had access to, and prepare a statement for our investors and partners. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. The private flight back to Seattle that should have been a celebration of the TED Talk's success instead became an emergency strategy session. Amara coordinated crisis communications while Natalie assessed potential financial implications. Jackson and his technical team began the painful process of reviewing every aspect of our architecture that Sanjay might compromise. By the time we landed in Seattle, Marcus Winters had arranged an emergency board meeting at Artscape's headquarters. The mood in our conference room was tense as board members and key investors assembled, their expressions ranging from concern to barely disguised panic. Let's address this directly, I began, refusing to sugarcoat the situation. Sanjay's departure to Horizon represents a significant challenge. He possesses intimate knowledge of our technology architecture and development roadmap. The market is already responding, noted one investor, gesturing to her tablet where Horizon stock had jumped 6% following the announcement. The narrative is shifting to Horizon potentially leapfrogging Artscape in emotional response technology. Can we pursue legal action? Another board member asked. Surely his employment agreement contained non-compete provisions. Washington State has limitations on enforcing non-competes, our general counsel explained. And while we had standard confidentiality agreements, proving specific violations would be challenging without evidence of direct code appropriation. Marcus Winters, uncharacteristically somber, cut to the heart of the issue. The immediate question is how this affects our expansion funding and market position. Several major investors have already requested calls to discuss their commitments. The implications were clear. The momentum we'd built through the Forbes cover, Wall Street Journal coverage, and TED Talk now faced a serious threat. Investor confidence could quickly erode if we didn't demonstrate a clear response strategy. We have 3 immediate priorities, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. First, accelerate our next-generation platform development to maintain our technological lead. Second, communicate transparently with partners and investors about our response plan. Third, reinforce our market differentiation through our ethical, framework, and privacy-centered approach. For the next 2 hours, we developed a comprehensive crisis response strategy. The board authorized emergency funding to accelerate development timelines. Winters committed to personally contacting key investors to reinforce confidence. Amara outlined a communication strategy emphasizing our first-mover advantage and ethical foundations. As the meeting concluded, Winters held me back as others filed out. This isn't just a technical or financial challenge, Riley. Matthews is attacking your personal credibility as a leader. The departure of your lead developer will be interpreted as a vote of no confidence in your vision. It's not about me, I protested. It's about Artscape's approach and technology. In this industry, at this stage, those are inseparable. Winters insisted. Matthews isn't just poaching talent, he's challenging your leadership narrative. How you respond will define Artscape's future. The following days confirmed Winters' assessment. Tech publications ran headlines questioning whether Artscape could maintain its innovation edge without Sanjay. Investor forums buzzed with speculation about how much of our secret sauce might now benefit Horizon. Several potential partnership discussions were suddenly delayed for further evaluation. Most concerning, our development team's morale plummeted. Sanjay had been more than a technical leader. He'd been a mentor to many younger developers who now questioned their own futures at Artscape. 1 week after the TED Talk, I faced another crisis. Natalie, our CFO, requested an urgent meeting. 3 major investors in our expansion round are wavering, she reported grimly. They're not officially withdrawing yet, but they've requested additional due diligence and timeline reassessments, which translates to looking for an exit strategy. I concluded. If they pull out, others will follow. The funding round could collapse. Natalie hesitated. There's another development. Kent Matthews has requested a meeting. With who? With you. Privately. The timing left little doubt about Matthews' intention. With our funding round vulnerable and team destabilized, Horizon was positioning for another acquisition attempt, likely at terms far less favorable than their previous offer. Decline the meeting, I instructed. We need to focus on stabilizing our position, not entertaining acquisition discussions. Natalie looked uncomfortable. Winters suggested you should take the meeting, at least hear what Matthews is proposing. The fact that Winters, our lead investor and strongest supporter, thought I should consider Matthews's overture underscored the severity of our situation. Despite my personal distaste for Matthews' tactics, I reluctantly agreed to a breakfast meeting at a neutral location. The following morning, I arrived at an upscale downtown restaurant to find Matthews already seated, reviewing documents with practiced nonchalance. He stood as I approached, offering a handshake I reluctantly accepted. Riley, thank you for making time. His tone suggested we were colleagues rather than competitors who had engaged in increasingly hostile tactics. I've been following Artscape's journey with genuine interest, including orchestrating media attacks and poaching our lead developer, I noted, taking a seat. Fascinating definition of interest. Matthews smiled thinly. Business is competitive? By nature. Sanjay made his own decision based on the opportunities we presented. Let's skip the pretense, I suggested. You requested this meeting for a specific reason. What is it? Matthews slid a folder across the table. Horizon is prepared to acquire Artscape for $200 million. Full cash consideration. Immediate closure. The offer, a third less than their previous proposal, confirmed my suspicion that Matthews was exploiting our vulnerable position. Not interested, I said without opening the folder. Just as we weren't interested at $300 million. The landscape has changed, Matthews pointed out. Your lead developer now works for us. Your funding round is destabilizing. The market is questioning whether Artscape can deliver on its vision without its technical architect. And, conveniently, you've helped create that exact narrative, I observed. Matthews shrugged. Perceptions matter in this industry. Currently, perception favors Horizon's ability to execute on emotional response technology. Our scale, resources, and now technical leadership position us to dominate this category. Is that why you requested this meeting? To explain why I should surrender to inevitable market dynamics? I requested this meeting to offer a graceful and profitable exit before circumstances deteriorate further. Matthew's facade of collegiality slipped slightly, revealing the predatory calculation beneath. Your vision has merit, Riley, but vision without execution capability is just an interesting TED Talk. The deliberate reference to my recent presentation meant to be Artscape's triumph, but now overshadowed by crisis, struck its intended target. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was Matthews right? Had Sanjay's departure fundamentally compromised our ability to execute? I pushed the folder back across the table, untouched. Artscape isn't for sale, not at any price. This isn't just about price. Matthews leaned forward. It's about legacy. Within Horizon, your work could reach billions of users. As a standalone company facing our competition, your market window is closing rapidly. Our approaches are fundamentally incompatible, I countered. Horizon optimizes for engagement and data collection. Artscape prioritizes emotional authenticity and user privacy. Pretty principles, Matthews acknowledged. But principles don't scale without market dominance, and you've just lost your technical path to that dominance. As I prepared to leave, Matthews delivered his final argument. Your investors are already questioning their commitments when Horizon announces our emotional response platform next month, incorporating innovations your former developer is already implementing. That questioning will become withdrawal. This offer represents your best outcome, Riley. I'll take my chances with innovation over intimidation, I replied, standing to leave. Artscape will compete on the quality of our vision and execution, not through poaching talent and manipulating market narratives. Though I maintained composure through the encounter, doubt followed me back to Artscape's offices. Matthews's assessment of our vulnerable position wasn't entirely wrong. Without our lead developer, and with investor confidence, wavering, our path forward had narrowed significantly. At our office, I found Jackson waiting with news that initially seemed positive. We've completed our security review. Sanjay doesn't appear to have taken any proprietary code or documentation before departing. That's something, at least. But, Jackson continued reluctantly, he didn't need to. His knowledge of our architecture and approach is comprehensive. He can help Horizon rebuild similar capabilities without directly copying our code. The challenge was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about protecting specific intellectual property. It was about maintaining our innovation lead despite losing a key architectural mind. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my father. I saw the news about your developer leaving, he said without preamble. How significant is this setback? The direct question, free from the platitudes others had offered, was characteristic of Victor Chen. He wanted unvarnished assessment, not reassurance. Significant, I admitted. Sanjay knew our technology architecture intimately. Horizon can accelerate their competitive entry by months, maybe years. And your response strategy? I hesitated, then shared the truth I'd been reluctant to acknowledge. Fully. We're still developing it. Horizon has effectively created a perception that Artscape's innovation was dependent on a single technical leader who now works for them. My father was silent for a moment, considering. When I faced the Medimax crisis, you identified the fundamental issue quickly. The algorithm itself was problematic by design. What's the fundamental issue here? The question cut through peripheral concerns to the core challenge. What was the actual problem beneath the immediate crisis? Dependency, I realized. Not technical dependency on Sanjay specifically, but market perception that Artscape's innovation resided primarily in one technical leader rather than in our organizational approach and philosophy. Then your response must address that fundamental misconception, my father suggested. Not by words alone, but through demonstrable evidence. The conversation shifted something in my perspective. I'd been focusing on the tactical crisis, lost talent, wavering investors, competitive threats, rather than the strategic narrative Matthews was constructing. That Artscape's innovation was personality-dependent rather than structurally embedded in our approach. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with our remaining technical leadership. Instead of focusing on damage control, I reframed the challenge. We've allowed a narrative to develop that Artscape's innovation depended primarily on Sanjay. I began. That's fundamentally false. Our approach to emotional response technology emerges from our collective philosophy and methodology, not any individual's contribution. For the next 3 hours, we worked to articulate that collective approach explicitly, the principles, frameworks, and methodologies that had guided Artscape's development independent of any single contributor. By midnight, we had outlined what I termed our innovation architecture, a formal documentation of how Artscape approached emotional response technology fundamentally differently from engagement-optimized platforms like Horizon. The following morning, I shared this framework with Marcus Winters, proposing an unconventional response to our crisis. Instead of defensive statements about Sanjay's departure, we publish our innovation architecture as a formal white paper, I explained. We demonstrate that our approach is embedded in organizational methodology, not dependent on individual talent. Winters studied the document thoughtfully. Revealing your innovation methodology publicly is unorthodox. Most companies guard such frameworks as proprietary advantages. Which is precisely why it's effective, I argued. It directly contradicts Matthew's narrative that he acquired our innovation capability by hiring Sanjay. It shows that our approach is embedded in principles that can't be transferred through individual talent acquisition. Bold strategy, Winters acknowledged, but potentially compelling if executed properly. With Winters' cautious support, we accelerated development of the white paper while simultaneously addressing immediate investor concerns. Amara coordinated with technology publications for the paper's release, positioning it as a natural extension of our commitment to transparency rather than a reactive defense. 2 weeks after Sanjay's departure, Artscape published Emotional Authenticity, an architectural framework for human-centered technology. The paper comprehensively documented our approach to developing emotional response technology, emphasizing the philosophical and methodological foundations rather than specific technical implementations. The response exceeded our expectations. Technology analysts praised the framework's cohesiveness and innovation philosophy. Several prominent AI ethicists endorsed our human-centered approach as a model for responsible technology development. Most importantly, the paper shifted discourse from Sanjay's departure to Artscape's distinctive innovation methodology. Natalie reported the first tangible impact. 2 of the wavering investors have recommitted to the funding round. They specifically cited the innovation architecture paper as evidence of organizational depth beyond individual contributors. The tide began to turn. Technical talent applications increased, with candidates specifically referencing our published innovation framework as their motivation for seeking roles at Artscape. Development teams reported renewed confidence and acceleration in next-generation features. Partner discussions that had stalled resumed with fresh momentum. 3 weeks after publishing the paper, we received unexpected validation from a former Horizon developer who publicly stated that Matthews had directed their teams to replicate Artscape's outcome but not methodology, inadvertently confirming that Horizon sought to copy our results without adopting the ethical framework that produced them. By month's end, our expansion funding round closed successfully, though with modified terms reflecting the turbulence we'd navigated. Artscape had weathered its first major crisis, emerging with clearer articulation of our unique approach and stronger organizational resilience. The experience changed me as a leader. The initial shock of Sanjay's departure had temporarily shaken my confidence in our vision. Matthews had exploited that vulnerability masterfully, presenting acquisition as the only rational response to inevitable market dynamics. But the crisis had ultimately forced us to articulate more explicitly what made Artscape different. Not just our technology, but our fundamental approach to human-centered innovation. In defending against an existential threat, we had strengthened our core identity. One Thursday afternoon, as our teams worked with renewed energy on next-generation features, I received an unexpected visitor. The receptionist announced that Victor Chen was in the lobby, asking if I had a few minutes available. I found my father studying the digital art installations in our reception area with unusual interest. He turned as I approached, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said formally. I was downtown for a deposition in the Medimax case and thought I might stop by. Of course, I led him to my office, curious about this unprecedented, spontaneous visit. My father had never before appeared unannounced at Artscape, or any workplace as far as I knew. His professional life ran strictly on carefully scheduled appointments. Once seated, he seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. I've been following your response to the developer's departure. The innovation architecture paper was impressive. Thank you, I replied, still puzzled by his presence. It reminded me of something. He reached into his briefcase, removing an aged medical journal. This was published during my residency. He opened to a bookmarked page showing an article he had written 40 years earlier. Integrated Diagnostic Methodology, Beyond Symptomatic Response. I proposed a framework for diagnosis that integrated technological assessment with human observation, he explained. It was considered controversial at the time, arguing that medical technology should enhance physician perception rather than replace clinical judgment. The parallel to Artscape's philosophy was unmistakable. Technology enhancing human emotional intelligence rather than supplanting it. I never knew about this, I said, genuinely surprised. His early publications had never been mentioned in family discussions. It wasn't particularly successful, he admitted. The medical establishment was embracing technological solutions that promised to standardize diagnosis through quantitative measures alone. My integrated approach seemed regressive to many colleagues. But you believed in it. I did. He nodded slowly. Reading your innovation architecture paper, I recognized something familiar. Not the technology itself, but the underlying philosophy about how technology should serve human capabilities rather than replace them. This unexpected connection, the realization that my approach to technology echoed my father's early vision for medicine, created a bridge between our seemingly divergent paths. Why are you sharing this now? I asked. My father's response came after careful consideration. Because I failed to recognize that your vision for technology carried forward principles I once advocated but didn't successfully implement. When you left Stanford to pursue Artscape, I saw only risk and impracticality, not the continuation of an approach I had once believed in deeply. The acknowledgement, more personal than his previous expressions of pride in Artscape's commercial success, represented a different kind of validation. Not of outcomes or status markers, but of the fundamental philosophy underlying my work. The innovation architecture paper demonstrates remarkable clarity of vision, he continued, particularly under pressure from a significant market threat. That capacity, to articulate core principles in response to challenge, defines genuine leadership. Coming from Victor Chen, who had built his reputation on unflinching diagnostic precision in both medicine and management, this represented his highest form of professional respect. Thank you, I said simply, understanding the significance of his assessment. As he prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. One more observation, if I may. Of course. Matthews approached this as a conventional competitive conflict. Acquire talent, destabilize funding, then present acquisition as the only rational solution. His expression showed rare animation. He fundamentally misunderstood what he was competing against. How so? He assumed Artscape's innovation resided primarily in technical implementation rather than philosophical approach. My father allowed himself a slight smile. A diagnostic error that may prove fatal to his strategy. After he left, I remained at my desk, reflecting on the unexpected connection between my father's early medical philosophy and Artscape's technological approach. For years, I'd defined my path in opposition to his expectations, not recognizing the underlying continuity in our thinking about how technology should serve human needs rather than reshape them. My phone buzzed with a message from Amara. TechCrunch requesting interview about innovation architecture framework. They're calling it a new paradigm for ethical technology development. Also, 3 more developers from Horizon just submitted applications to join our team. I smiled at the irony. Matthews had engineered Sanjay's departure to destabilize Artscape and force an acquisition. Instead, he had inadvertently pushed us to articulate our innovation philosophy more explicitly, attracting talent aligned with our approach while strengthening our market differentiation. Perhaps most significantly, the crisis had revealed unexpected connections between my father's early medical philosophy and my technological vision, between organizational resilience and innovation methodology, between transparent frameworks and market leadership. As Seattle's afternoon light filtered through my office windows, I opened the innovation architecture document once more, adding a new acknowledgement to its introduction. This framework builds upon a lineage of human-centered approaches to technology, including early work in integrated diagnostic methodology that recognize technology's highest purpose is enhancing human capability rather than replacing it. The attribution bridged generational perspectives, connecting my father's medical insights with Artscape's technological vision, not through family obligation, but through genuine intellectual lineage. The circle of understanding had expanded, transforming personal crisis into shared vision. The morning of Artscape's public offering dawned with unusual clarity for Seattle. Bright sunshine illuminating the city's skyline as I stood at my apartment. Window, coffee in hand. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. After 5 years of building, struggling, and transforming, today marked Artscape's transition from private vision to public company. My phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Markets buzzing. Institutional demand exceeding expectations. You ready for this? Was I ready? The journey from Stanford dropout to CEO of a company valued at over $1 billion had never been the straightforward path my family once envisioned for me. Yet somehow, through crisis and vindication, we'd arrived at this milestone. Rather than our offices, the leadership team had arranged to gather at the observation deck of Columbia Tower, Seattle's tallest building. The symbolism was deliberate, a perspective that encompassed both where we'd started and the expansive possibilities ahead. I arrived to find our core team already assembled, Jackson monitoring market sentiment on multiple devices, Amara coordinating with media outlets covering the IPO, Natalie in deep conversation with our investment bankers about opening price expectations. The newer faces, too, talented developers who had joined following the innovation architecture. Publication, drawn by our vision rather than mere compensation. There she is, Jackson announced. The woman of the hour. Before I could respond, another voice cut through the chatter. Arriving exactly on time. Some habits don't change. I turned to find my family, all of them, standing near the windows. My father with uncharacteristic informality in his posture. My mother allowing herself a genuine smile rather than her usual measured expression. Even Ethan and Zoe had taken rare days away from their demanding careers to be present. You came, I said, momentarily speechless at their collective presence. We wouldn't miss it, my mother replied, embracing me briefly. The first Chen IPO deserves family attendance. My father stepped forward, something clutched carefully in his hand. I brought this for today. He opened his palm to reveal my grandfather's carved wooden box, the one he'd given me after the Wall Street Journal investigation. Your grandfather kept his most precious tools in this. Today, it should hold this. He opened the box to reveal a small crystal sculpture of intertwined forms, recognizably Artscape's logo rendered in fine crystal. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely moved. Commissioned it specially, he explained with uncharacteristic self-consciousness. Though I suspect its value will be eclipsed by your stock certificates shortly. The joke, my father actually making a joke, marked how profoundly our relationship had evolved. 5 years ago, he couldn't conceive of value outside traditional professional paths. Now he stood at his daughter's IPO, having commissioned an artistic commemoration of her unconventional success. The observation deck's main screen flickered to life, showing the exchange floor where Artscape would shortly begin trading. Our banker approached, phone pressed to ear. "Final pricing confirmed at $78 per share," she announced. "Top end of the range. Institutional demand. Exceeding allocation by 3 times." Cheers erupted from the Artscape team. The valuation, over 4 times what Kent Matthews had offered during his acquisition attempt, validated our decision to remain independent despite the challenges we'd faced. My family exchanged glances, clearly impressed despite their limited familiarity with IPO dynamics. Even Ethan, whose investment banking career had exposed him to numerous public offerings, seemed genuinely startled by the numbers involved. "Proud of you, sis," he said simply, the straightforward acknowledgement more meaningful from my usually competitive brother than any elaborate praise. As the opening bell approached, Marcus Winters joined our gathering, his customary intensity momentarily softened. "Ready for your company's debut, Ms. Chen?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I admitted. "The road to today wasn't what any of us expected," he acknowledged. "But perhaps that's what makes it significant." Winters was right. The path, from family disappointment to Forbes cover, from talent departure to innovation architecture, from acquisition pressure to independent public offering, had taken unexpected turns. Yet each challenge had ultimately strengthened Artscape's vision and my leadership. The screen showed the exchange floor preparing for our opening. Amara gestured me toward the center of our gathering. "A few words for the team before we go live?" she suggested. I looked around at the faces before me, my professional family who had believed in our vision through countless challenges, and my actual family who had evolved from skeptics to supporters through their own journey of understanding. 5 years ago, I made a choice that many considered impractical, I began, to build technology that prioritized emotional authenticity in a market focused on engagement metrics and data harvesting. That choice wasn't always easy to defend, not to investors, not to competitors, and, I glanced at my parents, not to family concerned about traditional definitions of success. My father nodded slightly in acknowledgement of our shared history. But the vision that drove Artscape was never about following established paths. It was about creating technology that enhances human connection rather than diminishing it. Technology that responds to how we feel, not just what we click. Jackson raised his coffee mug in silent approval. Natalie smiled, remembering the countless pitch meetings where we'd defended this approach against skeptical investors. Today's milestone matters not because of valuations or share prices, but because it demonstrates that principles can scale, that an ethical approach to technology can create significant value while remaining true to its founding vision. The screen showed trading preparations in their final stages. The opening moments approached. "Whatever happens when that bell rings," I concluded, "remember that Artscape's true success isn't measured by market capitalization, but by how effectively we advance technology that respects and enhances human emotional experience." As I finished speaking, the opening bell rang. The screen displayed our ticker symbol and the first trades, immediately jumping to $86, then $90, then beyond. The room erupted in cheers as the valuation calculations adjusted upward in real time. Amid the celebration, I felt a hand on my shoulder. My father, his expression contemplative rather than jubilant. "May I offer an observation?" he asked quietly. "Of course." "What you've built extends beyond commercial success," he said, gesturing toward the exuberant team members checking share prices on their phones. "You've created a framework for technology that honors human experience rather than exploiting it. That may ultimately matter more than today's valuation." Coming from Victor Chen, who had spent decades measuring success through conventional status markers, this represented extraordinary evolution in perspective. "Thank you for seeing that," I replied simply. As the celebration continued around us, a notification appeared on the main screen. an announcement from Horizon Tech. Kent Matthews was stepping down as CEO, replaced by their board chair effective immediately. No explanation accompanied the announcement, but industry analysts were already connecting the timing to Artscape's successful public offering and Horizon's struggling emotional response platform. Jackson appeared at my side, grinning at the Horizon announcement. Poetic justice. Matthews orchestrated Sanjay's departure to force our acquisition and ended up strengthening our position while undermining his own. It was never about competing with Matthews, I reminded him. It was about building technology true to our vision. Still, he persisted, you have to appreciate the symmetry. Later, as the initial excitement settled into steady monitoring of our successful trading debut, I found a moment alone with my mother near the observation deck's windows. Seattle's landscape spread before us. Did you ever imagine this outcome when I left Stanford? I asked her. She considered carefully before answering. No, she admitted, but that reflects my limitations, not yours. You and Dad wanted security and recognition for me, I acknowledged. Those aren't bad things to want for your child. We confused the path with the destination, she replied thoughtfully. We believed certain professional routes guaranteed fulfillment and success. You understood something we didn't. That authentic vision creates its own path. My father joined us, gazing out at the city where his medical practice had established the family name before Artscape expanded its recognition globally. Your grandfather would have understood you immediately, he said, continuing a theme he'd returned to repeatedly as our relationship healed. He believed genuine innovation requires challenging established patterns, even when that creates temporary isolation. I wish I had known him better, I said truthfully. You honor his approach through your own work, my father replied. Creating technology that responds to human emotion rather than manipulating it. He would have recognized that philosophy immediately. The observation that Artscape's vision connected across generations, bridging my grandfather's artistic sensibility, my father's early medical philosophy, and my technological approach, created a sense of lineage I'd never fully appreciated before. As the trading day progressed, Artscape's share price stabilized at nearly double our offering price. The team celebrated this objective validation while I found myself reflecting on the less measurable achievements, the culture we'd built, the innovation approach we'd formalized, the technology philosophy we'd advanced. Marcus Winters approached. As the gathering began to disperse, investors and team members heading to various celebration events planned throughout the day. Congratulations, he said simply. Not just on the offering's success, but on building a company worth taking public. One, with genuine differentiation and sustainable philosophy. Thank you for believing in that vision early, I replied. Many investors wouldn't have. Most investors seek familiar patterns, Winters acknowledged. The truly significant opportunities emerge from recognizing legitimate innovation that challenges those patterns. As he turned to leave, he added a final observation. Matthews failed to understand what he was competing against. He saw technology features and talent acquisition. He never grasped the philosophical framework that generated Artscape's innovations, the same framework that allowed you to survive his talent raid and thrive beyond it. By late afternoon, as Seattle's early winter sunset painted the sky in dramatic oranges and purples, I gathered with my family for a private dinner. My choice, a venue rather than the formal restaurants they typically favored. I'd selected a small place in my old Capitol Hill neighborhood, the area where Artscape had first taken shape in my converted loft. Quite a change from the dining room where we once discussed your hobby, my mother observed as we settled around the table. Some things have changed, I agreed. Others have simply become clearer. My father raised his glass. To clarity, then, and to the vision to pursue it even when others can't yet see it. We clinked glasses in a moment that would have been unimaginable 5 years earlier, my family toasting the unconventional path they had once actively discouraged. Later, walking back to my car through the neighborhood where Artscape began, I paused outside the old warehouse building that had housed my first impromptu studio. The windows of my former loft glowed with the lights of new occupants, perhaps nurturing their own emerging visions. My phone buzzed with a message from Jackson. Final closing price, $124.83. Market cap, $3.12 billion. Not bad for a hobby. I smiled at the reference, but found myself more moved by the message that followed, from my father. Your grandfather's journal mentioned that true innovation often appears impractical until it reveals possibilities others couldn't imagine. You've honored that insight, proud of the path you've created. The validation, not of Artscape's commercial success, but of the vision and principles behind it, completed a circle. From family skepticism to professional dismissal to competitive attack, the journey had ultimately led to a deeper recognition that meaningful innovation often requires charting paths others initially question or dismiss. As Seattle's lights reflected against low clouds, I tucked my grandfather's wooden box, now holding both his memory and Artscape's crystalline emblem, into my coat pocket. The weight felt right, connecting past insights with present achievement, and future possibilities in a lineage I was only now fully appreciating. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the expectations of public markets, the responsibilities of expanded scale, the never-ending evolution of technology. But tonight, standing where the journey began, I felt something beyond validation or vindication. I felt the quiet certainty of having remained true to a vision worth pursuing, even when that pursuit led through territory others couldn't yet see or understand. The hobby had become a mission, had become a movement, not by abandoning its core principles for market acceptance, but by demonstrating that those principles could create value precisely because they challenged prevailing assumptions. My father was right. Some forms of success can only be achieved by first being impractical enough to imagine them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.